It is time to look at the Bitcoin price from a bit more global perspective, and today we will discuss two major scenarios of the future price development which I foresee. And right now, just a couple of words about the current situation. If you remember, yesterday I was drawing this silly bull flag over here, and surprisingly the price bounced just from the level which we pointed out yesterday, something like 6,450 or 60 as we have here, and we have now a little of the correction. In fact, this level is very close to 100 weeks moving average, and together with the huge volume profile of trading around this area before, it was expected that it will be a little of a pullback, but it's not necessarily be a huge one. And in fact, right now I see a lot of the change in the sentiment in the market, like when we were at 5,500 or something like this. Everybody were expecting a huge pullback from 6,400 being a very strong resistance area, and although we didn't break it yet, considering the arguments from the classical standpoint, I would say that the pullback should be much stronger and we already should see the fall in the price. But we don't, so everything looks pretty bullish right now. Also, the price is above the trend line which we drew from the previous low. I think Jacob Canfield also mentioned this in his Twitter and TradingView account. So price right now is above this trend line. And another thing is that if you look at the weekly stochastic oscillator indicator, then you would see that right now it is very close to the level which is historically was very strong resistance during the old bull market. We saw that, and now we either have already a bit of exhaustion and possibly a reversal downwards, or we will have one more tick to the upside to face this level. And as you can see, we didn't stay there very long. It's usually an indicative point of the upcoming correction, and weekly time frame gives you a pretty sober expression of the market, so we can be pretty sure about that. And returning to the weekly moving averages, you see that pretty much the same happened when the price was reacting to 50 weeks moving average. It tested it almost like a couple of times on the weekly time frame, and then we pierced through it. So maybe the same thing will happen right now. I wouldn't be surprised really. But if it will happen and will appear to be above that, it will be very, very bullish, again remaining above this trend line. If we look at the another channel which we drew before, we're still within this channel, but we are very close to the top. So technically the reaction with the top of this channel may be the zone of the pullback when we may see a little of the correction. So I would pay attention to this trend line as well. But from the general standpoint, like where we are going right now, and I would like to think about the situation from the standpoint of huge players, whales, market manipulators, whatever you call them, which have the dominance in terms of the Bitcoin which they have on their accounts, so they can move the price up or down in whatever fashion they want. So the general idea from them is that they want to buy low and sell high eventually, but they want for other people remain out of similar trades. So they need to move the market in the way that people will not be able to buy in the same levels, like buy low, and of course they don't want them to sell high. So far from like 3,000 plus level, they were implementing the technique without basically corrections areas, while a lot of the traders out there were expecting to see them similar to 2015 year, but it didn't happen. Instead, they basically dumped a lot of the altcoins holders, the most greedy ones who expected like enormous gains from the altcoins, but recently you saw the dominance of Bitcoin increase that much. So what I think they could do now is that there are like two major scenarios. First, I don't believe that we will go lower from that point or something like this. I don't think that this is reasonable just because it's very obvious. Too many people will short here. Too many people will sell and cover those open positions which they had from last year. Instead, will be the zone with a lot of liquidity where huge players could fill their longs and get a lot of volume. And moving the price higher, they actually could make a correction eventually, but this will be to the levels potentially much higher than current ones. So what are those two scenarios which I think are possible? First is that they will continue the same strategy for a while. For example, they will make this high to, let's say, 8,000 or something, and then make a very little correction on pretty much sideways, maybe actually testing this trend line, and then pretty much the same, like this, maybe like this, something like this. So reaching potentially a new all-time high, or at least repeating the previous high of 20k. And of course, like those numbers and time scale is very arbitrary, so don't quote me on that. It's just the guideline for our eyes. So without corrections, we'll still continue to go higher and higher, and people expecting the corrections to happen on the way will not buy at these areas. Instead, they will sell in order to buy lower, but it never happened, at least that much as they expected. Instead, we'll go higher, 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 and at that point, it would be very important to see where the price will go, because we either will continue to go sideways for a very long time, or maybe after the test of this trend line once again, we will move to the new parabolic phase of Bitcoin like this, and then we can see like this $100,000 or potentially even more within the next year or two. So this is very possible, and in that way, those market makers, they will not let the other investors buy on the way up. The second option which I consider is that we will actually turn this behavior without correction to the standard one when we have those corrections, pretty severe ones. So we can go something like this and this, working with a very round levels like 10,000, 15,000, and then having actually a severe corrections on the way. So in that way, people who are new in the market will sell on those lows because they were expecting, or in a fear they will sell because they were thinking that the price will go much lower. At the same time, the advanced traders, advanced investors will actually see this pattern, and they will sell at the tops and buy at the bottoms once over and over again. And also they may actually see this trend line and so on. So eventually at the one more test, they may see something like this, and even they will expect a new move to the upside, but instead of that, the price will do something like that. And this will be the new bottom which people expected from here but didn't have it. And in that way, again, whales will be able to get rid of the unexperienced traders around here, investors. And with this move, this is really, really unexpected, because everybody thinks that if the price will go like to the new all-time high, then it will go much higher above that. Or maybe it will not actually reach 20k, it's just really arbitrary. But anyway, as soon as we have this obvious uptrend, then after that, we will not get to the new low. We'll have a very strong parabolic rise, but instead of that, we may actually update low in December 18th. And by doing that, market manipulators will be able to eliminate the second part of the investors who are more sophisticated. And now just a couple of words about why I don't think that the pullback, at least from this or maybe a little bit higher levels to the new low, is not possible. So why I don't think that this is not reasonable is that, just again, imagine being a huge fish in the market, having most of the Bitcoin in your pockets. So technically you'll be able to move the price in this manner, okay? But then just consider this, the whole market is really, really small actually comparing to the traditional markets. And while yes, there are whales here, they are not the same whales, at least not all of the other whales out there. And if there will not be any more new capital in the space, then indeed this would be possible to do, like make other people panic and finally accumulate even more of the coins on the bottom, like new bottom. However, by dumping the price in this way, the whales are taking the huge risk that at some point there will be more newcomers to the market with big money, and they will actually buy their Bitcoins on the way down. So it may end up that they will not be able to buy more Bitcoins at the bottom, at the new formed bottom, because another players will actually make the same thing. So that is why it is really, really risky to short Bitcoin, at least at this point of time. It is not that risky here, because they already will make a lot of gains on the way up from the bottom, and they will sell here as well when a lot of people will buy at this area. So this is much more reasonable in terms of the risk to reward ratio. So, and if you actually think about the amount of money they have, like when you are trading like few $1,000s right now or whatever you have, it's very, very different comparing to the case when you have like few $100,000 or $1 billion. You will not want to take additional risk for this capital. Instead, you'll basically better to had a little bit less profit, but getting it with a higher probability. So that is why, at least from psychological point of view and like a general stance of the market, I don't believe that whales will decide to dump the price right now. So if you still wait for $3,000, just consider those arguments and make your own decision, of course, because everything which I say is my personal opinion, guys, and not a financial advice. So that is it for today. I hope it was useful. Thank you for watching.